These guys were first and foremost die-hard music fans, but they also happened to be raging techno geeks, and that made all the difference. The assault they would launch on the status quo in the music industry would lay the foundations on which the likes of YouTube and Facebook would be built, and they'd wage that battle using nothing but cojones and a stream of computer code. Now today we've all become a bit blasé about the web. We take for granted the huge changes it's caused in our daily lives, especially when it comes to how we consume media. But take a second and cast your mind back to, say, the mid-1990s. Remember how it used to be. Remember the incredibly tedious process that used to be involved when it came to laying your hands on a new piece of music. As I recall, it went something like this.
First, you'd hear a track you liked, maybe on the radio. Then you'd have to leave the house and go look for a record store. Poke around in the bins, find the music you're looking for, and then come all the way back home again. Finally, you'd get back to your comfy living room with your expensive new CD, which you'd bought on the strength of that one single you liked. You'd pop it into your CD player, put your feet up, and give it a listen.
And more often than not, you'd find out that the rest of the CD was complete and utter crap. But that's the way it was in those days, and there was nothing you could do about it.
Or at least that's what most of us thought. But tucked away in the college dorms and suburbs of America were some folks who thought differently. The nerds in question were guys like David Weekley, Justin Frankel, Cable Sasser, and Steve Frank. Music lovers who started playing around with some obscure technology that put tunes together with PCs and the web.
I think most people weren't ready for the idea that real music could come from their computer, and they'd actually be introduced to new music through their computer and through the internet. I mean, most computers didn't even have speakers that came with them.
It's kind of an exciting time because it was the beginning of that music revolution, and you could feel that it was changing. You could feel that something big was going to happen.
I made software for playing music that was really low quality and on homemade hardware in high school, and then by the time I was in college, MP3s sort of were available. So I started playing around with that, and the quality was actually really good.
In the old days, music files were huge and unwieldy, but MP3 provided a way of compressing the data in a much smaller digital packet, and therefore making it easy to move back and forth around the net.
Turned on by the possibilities of all this, Frank, Sasser, and the 18-year-old Frankel went and created downloadable media players Audion and Winamp, applications that allowed users to store and play music in the form of MP3s on their computers. But that was just the start. Music lovers and internet enthusiasts like David Weekley were getting excited about the idea of distributing and accessing MP3s online. As a Stanford computer science freshman, Weekley launched an MP3 information website laden with downloadable ear candy. For down in Los Angeles, executives like Jay Sammet of EMI Records had created a cushy life for themselves doing things the same technophobic way that they'd always been done. MP3, web audio, ripping, mixing, burning. Their reaction was, not a chance.
The record industry as an industry, of all the labels working together, funded a project called Madison, which was a test with IBM to put CD burners in people's homes. This was a test done in San Diego to see would consumers purchase and download and burn music. And the conclusion of this very expensive test done by IBM and these major record labels was that no consumers would ever want to do this.
And what a brilliant insight that was. It's worth recalling, of course, that a couple decades earlier, the geniuses at IBM had decided that the worldwide market for PCs would never be more than a couple thousand units. And now the dinosaurs of the record industry were making the exact same mistake again. Instead of, heaven forbid, embracing the net, the music business fat cats adopted a posture of perfect and absolute denial. Under no circumstances would they allow any of the copyrighted material of their artists to be circulated anywhere on it. But as the industry would soon discover, like every other parent eventually does, the kids of America didn't really care whether they had permission or not.
The idea that music could be distributed on the web and freed from the rule of the record industry was about to go mainstream in a massive way. amidst a frenzy of downloading that would ultimately pave the way for services like YouTube. All this thanks to a shy 18-year-old from Boston with a novel but thoroughly disruptive software idea.
His idea was called Napster, and his name, Sean Fanning.
Back in 1999, Fanning was studying at Boston's Northeastern University. He liked to play guitar and, like his friends, surf the web for downloadable music.
My roommate in college was really into rap music and would download all sorts of obscure rap, and he'd have his friends over on the weekends and we'd party, and they were all interested in getting access to his music or figuring out how to get music in the same way that he did. But he put so much time into finding tracks, it was such a pain that he would skip class to do it. And if he found a good site, he would skip, an entire day worth of classes just to make sure he got everything he wanted.
What Fanning and his friends were finding was that while it was technically possible to share and download each other's music, even with MP3, it was a royal pain, interminable and unreliable. And even then, you had to know something about computer programming to pull it off. How many kids were like that?
This gave Sean Fanning a big idea. I mean, like, really big. So big that its repercussions are still rippling all throughout the internet and the entertainment industry today.
I started to come to the realization that there were all of these people with music collections that had music that other people would be interested in, and they wanted to share them, and the logical way to solve that and some of the reliability issues was to do something that created what was essentially a peer-to-peer architecture.
So how did this peer-to-peer system work? Well, Napster allowed its users to let their PCs talk and share stuff with the computers of other users. This meant that as long as someone somewhere had an MP3 of the song you wanted, all you had to do was fire up Napster, type in the name of the song, and it would be downloaded onto your hard drive straight from theirs.
Napster was kind of built out of necessity. I really wanted to use what I was building.
And he wasn't alone, because Fanning, a kid too young to buy a drink in most American states, was about to spark a phenomenon and cause one of the most heated controversies in the history of technology.
With Silicon Valley venture capitalists pounding at the door, Fanning picked up and moved out west to California, turning Napster from a hobby into an official business. The future looked bright for the fledgling service, but there was just one little problem.
Napster's unprecedented success hadn't passed unnoticed by Hillary Rosen, the head of the Recording Industry Association of America, an organization set up to represent the interests and protect the revenues of the music business. Rosen was known as one tough cookie, and she wanted a word with Fanning.
We called Napster and said, wow, cool idea. Did you know it's illegal? And really, no, it can't be illegal. This is, well, okay, yeah, maybe it is. Tell us what you want us to do. He says, well, you're really going to have to filter out the copyrighted songs on your site. Well, how do we know what's copyrighted? Well, pretty much if it says Rolling Stone, if it's a Rolling Stone song, you can imagine it's copyrighted.
Angry at seeing their music being shared and distributed for free on the internet, scary, hairy, and disgustingly rich rock acts like Metallica took action. And so too did Rosen and the RIAA, filing a lawsuit against Napster that promised to have profound implications for the role of copyright in the digital age.
After a furious, bitter legal battle that took place here at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, amid a massive swarm of press from around the world, in July 2001, a verdict was rendered. Napster had to be shut down immediately. The music business had won, at least for now, but it had also shown itself to be a reactionary force. Rather than embracing the future, it had panicked and declared war on its customers, calling them outlaws rather than what they really were, fans.
With its vindication in the courts, the music industry could claim a victory in its war against file sharing. It had shut down Napster and sent Sean Fanning packing. And it encouraged Steve Jobs and Apple to create the iTunes Music Store, where songs were sold for 99 cents apiece, with strict copy protection that made the labels very happy.